I'm Stacy.
And I'm Rachel.
This is Laughing with Loss, a podcast about healing with humor. And I just want to start off with, we're going to be laughing through everything today and every day. It's going to be a lot of loss, a lot of humor, and as I said before, potentially a lot of cursing.
Yes, definitely a lot of cursing. We're super excited today. We have a guest on, Marissa Geraci, a licensed therapist here in Tampa. We're so pumped to have her on. And side note, she is Stacy's therapist, but we won't get to that juicy part till the end of the show.
Nah, not yet.
Really, thank you guys so much. I'm truly honored to be your first guest.
Yeah, we're so excited. Yeah, we're very excited. Tell us a little bit about Marissa.
Okay,
you got all the juice on her.
The fun thing is that she actually has a bachelor's in finance and a master's in mental health counseling. And she's trained EMDR, not EDMR. This is not a rave. And she's going to talk about a little bit about what that is, because not a whole lot of people know what that is, and it's super cool.
Just remind me of that song. I'm looking for a guy in finance.
Looking
for a therapist in finance.
She's roughly 5'4"-ish
on a good
and
day.
blue eyes, so we're solid.
We're doing good.
And she can definitely do the money part.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, cool. Marissa, tell us a little bit about what some of your specialties are, or what you see the most cases of.
Not a case.
Not a case.
A case.
Put a briefcase here.
What is most common? And right now, anxiety for sure tops everybody's list of mental health stuff. And then usually no matter what someone is coming to therapy for, we talk about relationships. Either the relationship they're in or the relationship that they don't have that they wish they had. So that's common. And then depression, life changes.
Yeah. Why do you feel like anxiety is top of the list? I feel like I see that a lot. We both work with young people. I see a lot of anxiety in young people.
So much.
Is it social media? Is it the way of the world? What's your take on it?
Like the 20-somethings, I feel like it is next. It is like every single 20-something that really has a hard time with anxiety.
That's a big, difficult question to answer, right? Like,
How
can I globally explain why more people have anxiety?
Right.
Is social media a factor? I personally think yes.
Agreed.
I've heard other therapists or people out there say no, it's not. And if you look at this, that doesn't make sense to me.
That doesn't make sense.
Because there's a lot of comparison is huge, and keeping up with the Joneses, and other people are doing this, and other people are getting married and having babies, and that makes me think there's something wrong with me because I'm not doing those things, or those things aren't happening for me.
We've all been there.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Show me.
I've been there.
Where have you been?
Back in the day. In yesteryear.
Yes.
In yesteryear.
Yes.
You know, I got married young, thinking I had to be married and have kids and white picket fence.
Right.
That did not work out well for me.
Well, I mean, it led you here.
It did lead me here, so that was super good.
But you're in that place now where you can have the hindsight and go, it led me here, so it's
Exactly,
okay.
exactly.
When you were in that, it didn't feel that way.
No.
Even if someone said, I know you're going to find somebody someday, and it's all going to be,
Vomit.
you would have been like, you would have.
Hate that.
Yeah.
Can I
show
do
me
that?
that again? Show me that again. Yeah.
I think that's one thing, with my cancer or with the death of my dad, it gets better, it gets easier. It never gets easier because you've lived with that person your whole life, and now you have to live the rest of your life without him. And with your cancer, we talked about that before. Oh, the easiest kind. I'm so sorry. What are you talking about? You should never say that to someone, or, oh, it gets better. Maybe it did for you and your type of cancer. Maybe it doesn't for me because, from a personal life, I struggle with now my body being different, and that's very challenging because I have these body image issues. I have these eating challenges, and just trying to figure out how do you do that at 41?
How do you navigate that?
Right. Because reality is, as much as I would love to have lipo and this, why would I be doing that? Reality is, I'm not going to
What's that thing that we found, the emo sculpt or something? What is that thing called?
The cool sculpt.
Oh, the cool
There's
sculpting.
so many different ones. But why am I doing that? I'm happy.
That could be a whole session. You should probably
You should probably
I can
book
wear a
with
fucking body
Marissa
shaper.
for that one.
Yeah.
But reality, it doesn't impair my day-to-day life. I'm just like, "Meh." But the point is, we don't need to tell people it gets better.
We could probably do a whole podcast. I'm sure you guys already have this slated, but of all the things not to say to somebody who is going through trauma, going through loss, going through a divorce, having cancer, right?
But tell us some of those things, because I think give us like top 5.
Top 5 of what?
Top 5 things you shouldn't say to someone when they're going through trauma.
I think Stacy already covered some of them, right? Like, it'll get better, or when somebody passes away, they're in a better place. Sometimes God has a plan, is well-meaning, but it's not helpful. They're no longer suffering. Or someone jumps to, well, I had this experience and it got better for me because.
I know you said that one time. I feel like because you're also my therapist, we had a session one time and you were talking about how there's something about when you go to tell someone, oh, this is what's wrong or this is what's happening, and they immediately turn it around into their experience because they think that they're helping you. What is that? Why do people do that?
A couple reasons, right? So one is I want to communicate that I hear you and I understand. So some of it is, again, well-meaning, right? Like I've also had a loss. I've also lost a parent, and I'm telling you that so you can understand that I understand that emotion.
Like trying to connect,
trying to relate.
Like trying to connect.
Sometimes it's I don't know how to hold space for your loss and your pain and your heavy emotion, so I need to insert something else in this conversation instead of Stacy telling me I'm so hurt, I'm depressed, I'm traumatized, I can't get out of bed, and me saying that really sucks. I'm so sorry you're going through that.
Just say that.
Yeah.
Just say that. I believe that too, about just saying like, I fucking hate this for you.
Yes.
And because you and I just talked about that, if I can hold space for you and your luggage, I will ask you, is there anything I can do to support you?
Right. Great question.
But sometimes you're not able to do that. Like you have so much luggage on your caddy. You're like, how do I carry this? I can't carry it anymore. So sometimes we're incapable, even though somebody says, how are you? I might not be able to ask you, how are you? Because I can't hold it today. And that's okay. Like that's okay to protect yourself in those times.
So I am listening to you guys, but I'm also thinking like we're in skeleton costumes and have not explained why we're in skeleton costumes.
Yes.
So we should probably touch on that. And I want you to tell people about the butterflies, and then we're going to talk about what Marissa's costume is.
I just have the
therapist.
She's the childless cat lady.
Oh, and I think we need to touch on Harry Potter because that is so huge. So I took a couple screenshots about. So
you have
monarchs,
a bunch of
butterfly. My stepmom, mom, and my mom, and I have matching butterfly tattoos, and I have this little worm on my other ankle that I called the tequila worm. And I'm like, Mom, this is years ago. I'm like, Mom, what is this? And she's like, it's the metamorphosis of life. Okay. And I'm like, way to get deep, Deb.
Your mom is
way
like
to get deep, Deborah. Okay, so there are a couple ways to look at butterflies, but also monarchs. So it says here, the souls of the deceased and the connection between life and death. Very
fitting. Fitting. I should have put my
laughing with loss, right? And a couple more things were, too bad you don't have the one that like, remember,
I know,
zippered up and like,
it would mess up my hair. It wouldn't bode well for me.
Ooh, no. Another one is resilience and transformation, a little bit of hope. And the one I like is the enduring bond between the living and the deceased. I love that shit.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Right?
How did you find the most perfect costume for you?
This is what party.
So Amazon delayed their delivery. First off,
Imagine that hurricane.
Imagine that, and then she Googled Party City and woke up super early and was there.
I know, right? Yeah, and this is what they had, where it was like a glow in the dark or like a skeleton.
So thank you, Party City.
Or nothing.
Yeah.
Hey, thanks.
Okay,
Party
back
City.
to Marissa. Sorry, I just had to interject that.
No, it's important.
Yeah.
I think.
I have a big question. Why finance to mental health?
Looking for a therapist in finance. 6'5".
I didn't know that was a song. You guys are gonna have to send it to me.
Yeah, we definitely will.
We'll definitely send it. Like, what was that shift? And when was it? How long had you already been in finance?
Almost immediately.
You went to school, started finance, and you're like, screw this.
Yes,
Yeah,
pretty much.
yeah.
Because I thought it was going to be one thing, and then it was very much another. And I was working for one of the big finance companies, investment firms, and I was on this team, and I felt super important, right? I worked for XYZ firm, and I had my Series 7 and my 66, and that was like, right, that was so much a part of my identity. And I learned a lot. I'm glad I started that way, but it was day after day of feeling like I can't possibly do this forever. And I would see all these other women that had been there for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years. I'm like, this cannot be my life.
Was it just like too many numbers? Was it the schedule? Was it the people?
All of the above. Yeah.
And now at that time, did you have your own therapist, like for your own life stuff?
I think I tried. I think I just never found anybody at the time that was a good fit. But I had always known, so even when I was in college, I kind of always had this idea that I wanted to be a sex therapist. Right? I thought that that was something.
That is so cool. Now, can you also tell us, like, what does sex therapy entail? Like, I mean, I don't even think I know what that entails.
So that's a good question. One of my friends' husbands will sometimes ask, like, when are you going to watch us have sex and tell us what we're doing?
Neat. No,
that's
love that.
not what they do.
Got it.
But
Like a coach or something.
Okay, so now you're going
to watch your form
this way.
I'm sure that there are people who do that. That's not what sex therapists do.
There are.
But it is an important distinction, because when you are a therapist, meaning a psychologist, a licensed mental health counselor, a social worker, you go to school and you get that degree, and you can pretty much practice generally as a therapist and see most people for most things. The two things that you need additional certifications for are addiction and sex therapy. So, and the certification's like $7,000 or something, so I just haven't done it. But but the point is that that was something I always thought that I wanted to do, I'd be interested in. I'm like, I could research this and talk about this and it would be so great. And then I took a finance class and I thought, well, this is practical. And then I ended up there for 10 years. And then went through some stuff, right? Everybody goes through some stuff.
So life happened.
Right, life happened. And I had a friend that was like, if you know what you want to do, like, why don't you go do it? And you know how you, like, until somebody says something
it's
a
like
certain
the little
way,
things.
right? And I was like, oh yeah, I guess I could. So step by step, I did it, and it was hard. And like now that I'm on the other side, I'm like, oh, it was great, and it was so worth it. Not like you're like, oh, I found Stacy, and everything before that was worth it. But during that time, I could tell you it was not pretty.
Wait, I need to know what sex therapy does entail, if you're able to talk about that.
And why sex therapy? Was it just like a not wildly researched thing, or?
I just thought it was something that everybody does, right? That's the reason we're all here. And it's something that can bring so much pleasure and joy and self-exploration, but I would hear people either not talk about it because it's taboo, or you know, people that are married that are like, oh, God, I don't even care if my husband sleeps in the same bed with me anymore. And I was like,
ouch.
What?
Yeah.
Well, that can't be how it is for everyone forever. Like there has to be a way to make it feel like it does at the beginning forever. I still don't know if that's a thing, but that was what I was going to set out to figure out.
So this could be a little bit of a trigger warning, but with like SA, so like sexual assault and things like that, do you help people or try to help people like integrate back into physical relationships for pleasure, for fun, or connecting with their spouse? Like, is that something? Because even though a lot of people that that's happened to know that therapy is an option, and I know that that has got to be very hard to seek out and say, this has happened to me, but like I'm totally over it, or I can't be in a relationship, or I can't be physical. Is that something that you help with as well?
So that would be something that if someone called me and said, this is what I need, I would say, you probably need someone who's a sex therapist.
Okay.
I probably cannot address you reintegrating into a physical relationship with someone.
Okay.
But if you want to address the trauma of what happened, that is where I might use EMDR. Okay. So a transition to that, or a segue to that.
Can you tell us a little bit about what that is? Because I've done it before. It was
the EDMR.
EDM parties.
It was mind-blowing and totally changed my life, and the experience that I had with that, which we can touch on that if you want to, but tell everyone what it is.
Yeah.
Because if you haven't done it, you need to try.
Correct.
So I'm going to answer that question with a question back to you first.
Okay.
When people ask you what it is, as someone who has done it and it has been helpful for, are you able to explain it?
So pretty much I say they put these things in your hands and you close your eyes, and it's like vibrational back and forth, right? And then I hate saying the word hypnotize. I feel like people think that that's like a hoax. I definitely didn't feel like you hypnotized me, but I felt like you just guided me through probably one of the most, and I didn't realize it was a single traumatic memory, but I think it was one memory that really in my life formed me and shaped me. Do you want me to tell what the memory is?
For sure. It's
Obviously,
your story.
okay.
Do I care?
So
I care.
Yeah.
I care.
If my parents listen to this, I love you. I'm sorry. But I came out super young, and me and my parents, we just didn't agree on it. A lot of things happened. And then I was dating someone older than me, probably too old at the time. My parents forbid me to be with her, obviously. And then I was taken out of school, and my parents had this family friend watch me, you know, to make sure I wasn't like seeing the girl. But the person that was watching me was like, "Oh,
Do you
I'll
mean
let
like
you
watching like
babysit me, like."
Okay.
But I was like 16, right? So it was just like us sitting on the couch. But she was like, "Oh, you can contact so and so, or you can write letters to so and so, and I'll pass them along." And the whole time she was giving all the communication to my parents instead of giving it to this girl. So then I come home from school one day and there's like cops and all this stuff. My mom was like reading my diary and like just reading all these letters. So it was super traumatic. And I think it just gave me all these feelings of like mistrust and, you know, not like, then I think then I never really fully let people in, which kind of is probably why I'm good at my job, because I'm able to have this like facade of I'm a chef and nobody needs to know anything past that. But it spawned all this trauma and issues for me in my life, and I didn't know that until I did EDMR. And she, you know, you guided me through. We were talking. I was having a session about coming out, and you guided me through kind of some of the issues I was having, and it just immediately went to that memory, and I lived that whole memory. And the crazy thing about it is that you're in that memory and you're watching it like. It's like when you see those movies and you're watching your past self in that thing, and your past self doesn't know that you're there, and you're just watching this whole thing happen. And I was like, what the hell? Like, you ever see those movies where, and I'm going off on a tangent, so please cut me off at any time, where it's like you're doing something and something happens to you and you don't realize that something has helped you, and then it's flashback and it's like you traveled back in time to yourself, but yourself didn't know that you were there. It was totally like that moment. So okay, now that I've explained
I
this
have a
from my
question
perspective,
too. Statement question. And I have found too that if we feel betrayed by the people that were supposed to protect us most, that leads into regular relationships, because it's like this person that was supposed to protect me has now hurt me, and you're like, well,
and I remember you said after that, you're like, this might take a couple weeks for your brain to process, and I told you that I left that session, and I don't know if I've even ever told you this. So
did you go to the graveyard and cry?
I did. I drove to a cemetery and I sat on the hood of my car and I just cried for like an hour, and I watched like my younger self from like 6 to 10 in my mind. I know, like just run through, and it was like, I have to let this person go. I have to put her to rest. Like, she's gone now. Now I am this person, and how can this person operate in the world? And I had to mourn the loss of my youth, innocence, what I thought my parents were supposed to be when I was 16 versus what they are now. And I had to move on from that. But I would have never gotten there without that experience.
Right. So tell us like how she said about the hand
what it is.
and like, I'm taking you back.
I don't say that, and I definitely don't say it like that.
Yeah.
But maybe I could. So I tell clients all the time when I introduce EMDR that it usually takes me a half an hour to explain. But the elevator speech is that we use eye movement, EM. We use eye movement to desensitize and reprocess old emotion. Sometimes it is, we call them touchstone memories, like those things that were really impactful. And it could be something when you were 3 years old. It could be something that happened last week. And sometimes we're consciously aware of what those are, and sometimes we're not.
Right.
For you remember that experience, but it wasn't conscious in your memory every day. Like, I'm still struggling with this.
I didn't know
much.
like that was the anchor. It was like that memory was the anchor.
And sometimes, I think you and I probably did this. There are a list. EMDR has a list of the most common negative cognitions that people have, starting with I'm not good enough, right? Everybody has a little bit of that in some aspect of their life, right? And so we have this list of all the negative cognitions, and I have people go through and say, ooh, this feels true. This statement feels true. This statement hits home. And then we ask, what is the first time you remember feeling this and the worst time you remember feeling this? And that is usually a pretty good trigger, for lack of a better word, for those memories to pop up that are attached with that negative belief.
So excuse me, do you sometimes find that coincides at the same exact time? Like, when did you feel like this? What was the worst? Do you feel like people kind of stick in that time, or is it happened when I was 3, but the worst was when I was 15? Or is it like it just felt the worst and it was the worst and it is the worst at 3?
It depends.
Okay.
It is such a cool form of therapy to practice and to watch and be able to sit with people while they're going through their process, because it's so different for everyone.
I can only imagine.
You went right to it, and sometimes people don't, right? Sometimes they'll have a first 1, 2, 3 sessions where like nothing's happening. But if you're more type A and more wanting to control, or you're nervous, sometimes that prevents you from going where you need to go. You had an experience where you're like, I just went right there and I just let it happen.
And I think if you meditate and you're used to that, kind of allowing your mind to escape and get into that zone, it was a lot easier. Yeah, I think that was why I was just, it was the most insane experience. It was like...
Do you feel like you would do it again? Like, do you feel like...
Absolutely.
But do you feel like there are other things in your life that you could really use some guidance on to kind of get to the foundation of some things? Or do you feel like that was the foundation? I really understand where some of these feelings, these behaviors come from.
I feel like there's probably still, for sure, some things I could figure out. But I don't feel as trapped or as, why can I not form relationships? Why can I not hold friendships? Why do I not trust people?
Right.
Why can I not, why do I forget everything after a month? I mean, my sister and I were talking about that, how trauma forces you talk about that, because you'll explain it better than me, how trauma erases things in your mind.
Yes and no. Some people have the experience of they have a trauma and they block it out, right? Their brain maybe does that automatically because it's too hard, too much. For some people, it's using unhealthy coping mechanisms to block things out. We turn to, and I think you guys talked about this, that for everything Stacy had been through, she never turned to drugs or alcohol, which most people would hear that and go, well, but if you did, I wouldn't blame you, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So, right, sometimes trauma blocks itself out on its own, or we use unhealthy coping mechanisms, but sometimes it's just there and present for people, and they see it the minute they wake up and they think about it all day. And does that answer your question?
I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure, but I was talking to my sister last night, and we both kind of experienced trauma in like the 15 to 18 range. And now as adults, it's very hard for me personally to remember things if they're not in my like short-term memory. Like if you are not this super impactful human, or we didn't have this like relationship or whatever, and I knew you when I was 21, there's a good chance I have no fucking clue who you are now at 37. And people will meet me and see me like, oh my God, hey, how are you?
So this is a cool conversation, and I don't fully know the answer, but so that experience for you where like, I don't remember shit after a month after it happens, is that because you experienced trauma in your youth, or is it because you just don't have a good memory? And what does that mean, right? Like,
but then I can remember like recipes and things, and so I feel like they always say like your plate is only this big. Like there's things that I allow myself to remember, and there's things that don't, and then I'll remember stupid stuff like memories when I was 3 years old.
But that's not stupid. I mean, it's relevant.
But the memory was that I thought I was going to go to the store with my parents, and I got ready, and then they left without me. Oh my God! Insert like, what is that? Like just trauma and rejection, whatever. But so dumb.
Like abandonment.
Yeah, but such a ridiculous memory that I remember, but I couldn't remember some that maybe I had a friendship with when I was 22.
So, and I know sometimes because I struggle with, I don't struggle with it, but object permanence and just like some of the behaviors that I have, totally diagnosable. When I was 12, it just kept going. But for some people I know in my life, they translate that as you or the situation was not important enough to me. And it's not that, because that might have been very important to me. And if you reminded me of it, it would still be very important. Like, how do you explain that to people? Like, you are important. That was important. What do you just say? Like, I'm so, because like, how do you translate that? Like, oh, I'm sorry about my shortcoming. Like, is that a shortcoming, or is it just like, that's just how my brain works and you are important?
that. It's the reassure. If somebody were to bring that up, like, how could you not remember this? Was it not important to you? First of all, not everything has to mean something, right? Everyone always wants to
Thank God for saying that. That needs to be like the headline. Not everything has to mean something.
Yes.
So Stacy doesn't remember this, so it has to mean that she doesn't care.
Right.
We can get totally into that with relationship stuff if you want. But just the reassurance, like, my brain just doesn't hold on to everything. But now that you bring it up, I do remember that. And of course it meant something to me.
Yeah, totally. Yes. So, okay, I want to ask, what do therapists do for their own therapy?
Yes, I mean, that's a huge one, because that's like a question I had. How do you deal with your own loss and your own grief while counseling others, and like taking those bricks, if you will, bricks on these heavy bricks, and meanwhile, like, your life could potentially be falling apart. Your family is dwindling. You and your spouse might, like, how do you do that?
We're just really good at compartmentalizing.
Right?
You have to be.
And I don't know if it's like this for either of you. When you go to work, you're there, you're present, and you're that, and you're able to just, nothing else is in here with me right now. Some days that's easier than others, right? And I can't speak to what other therapists do. I think that most of us are very aware that we need our own coping skills, or we need our own therapist, or we need whatever, a boundary for how many clients you see every day. So it could be that. I know I can only see so many clients every day. I know I can't work so many consecutive days. I know I can only see a certain population. Like, I don't work with addiction, one, because I'm not certified for that, but two, I know personally I can't work with that. Right. And then what do you do outside of your sessions? Do you meditate? Do you journal? It's the same self-care as everybody else. It's just what works for you as an individual. For me, I do a lot of yoga, I spend a lot of time with friends, and I am outside as much as possible.
And do you feel like that is something that helps you deal with the energy that comes along with those feelings? And when you, if you feel like talking about it, like when you meet with your therapist, are you meeting with them to ask for tools, or are you just like, I need to unload this and I'm going for a hike in Prague?
Yes. So I think that is something that people don't put enough emphasis on about why therapy is effective, is sometimes just unloading all of that. Something I do want to talk about. This is a tangent, but I think it's important.
I love the tangent.
Well, maybe you guys can give me some feedback, because this is something I don't understand in the world of social media, how there's so much information, and some of it's good and some of it's not, but some of it is very conflicting. Right. There is the one side that we hear all the time of ask for help. Use your support system, share your story, be open, be vulnerable, hang out with your tribe and like tell them all your shit, right? But then I also hear, don't trauma dump. Don't tell people too much. Don't put all your shit on somebody else.
I think that's a you thing.
Yeah.
Like, you're saying, well, either I've been trauma dumped on, or like I've been betrayed when I've done that, so just don't do that because you're going to get burned type situation.
Could be.
Well, I feel like in my profession, right, I have a lot of employees, and a lot of times I always say, like, I can sit on my therapy couch, because there's a couch in my office, and a lot of times the employees will unload on me stuff that's happening in their personal life. But I will never go home, and sometimes on those days where people have told me a lot of stuff, I don't then go home and tell her. She'll be like, how was your day? I'm like, it was fine. So it's like, I'm not reciprocating that either. So it's kind of interesting, because I'm always like, talk about your feelings. I'm here for you. Like, what do you need? Like, how can I help you? But then I don't practice that, like I only come see you when something's like really, really wrong. Not just like, hey, every Wednesday I see my therapist to just talk about life, so that's an interesting movement.
Oh, something else. I'm going to put you back on the hot seat, if I can say this, and we can cut it out if you don't want me to.
No, do it.
So something for you, after Stacy went through trauma after trauma after trauma, you trying to show up as a supportive spouse when you also had your own shit going on. And I remember you asking me, like, how do I can't go home and tell her my stuff because she has so much of her own.
Yeah. Well, especially like when your dad died, and I think I was going through my own stuff with that, and then I had a lot of and I probably still do, issues when I got sick and I was in the hospital, and just like every year around September, I would start to have like panic attacks or whatever. And I just couldn't, I didn't feel like I could dump that on you. You never made me feel like I couldn't, but I think that's just one of those, probably back to that EMDR moment of like, take care of yourself. All you have is yourself. Don't trust anyone. Keep everything inside.
But what did I always tell you? Like, don't decide that for me. Don't because you're my partner. And sometimes it like takes it off you. Like, oh, I don't have to focus on myself for
Yes.
This is great. Yes. And I think you and I have the relationship enough for me to be like, I cannot even handle what you got going on right now. You're gonna have to call Marissa, because I do say that there in the past. I'm like, you're gonna have to call Marissa because I don't have the answer for that. And sometimes there are things that go on between you and I, and we really try to work it out. And sometimes we circle back and we have worked it out. But if we can't work it out, I mean, we will lean on you, which is not too often.
But and I think when we can't work it out, it's because I think you told me this term one time. It's like you're speaking Chinese and I'm speaking German. It's like we're still trying to get the point across, but we are not understanding what the other person's saying at all.
Right. And I think when a couple goes through, and of course, correct me, but when a couple goes through things, just like everything else, like I've said with Hannah, everyone experienced that differently. My dad, everyone experienced that same exact thing very differently, because we all lose different people. But I have somewhere I'm going with this. I'm not 100%. Oh yes. So as a couple, right?
Okay.
We're able to help each other limp along sometimes, because sometimes we are both only limping along and not jogging alongside each other, but not feeling or speaking for your partner. Well, I didn't want to talk to you about it because you're going through your own thing. Like, my boss always says, don't spend people's money for them. If I'm like, oh, but a full head of highlights and a 60-gram gloss and a color balance and this and that, her thing is offer it. If they're able to afford it, they will budget for it, but don't decide that for them. Like, I don't think we should ever decide that for our people that we're in relationships
You
with.
have two people that you always suggest to us to listen to, and I kind of want you to talk about that. And there's an example about something of 10%, like I have 10% today, or I have 90% today.
Yeah, so it was one of Brene Brown's videos that went viral.
Yeah.
And she was talking about how marriage is not always 50-50. And something that she and her husband do is when they come home, they'll each say like, I got 20%. Oh, well, you know what? I'm okay. I got 80%. I'll cover you today. And then maybe vice versa. But then sometimes they'll both come home and go, I got 20%. And the other person goes, I have 20%. And I would love to hear a follow-up on this specific video, because what she then says is, we have to sit down and have a conversation about what that's going to look like. And I'm like, that is beautiful.
Do you think their whole life is just therapizing each other just every minute?
And that's gonna be hard.
That's
gonna be hard.
I would be like, I just want to eat French fries, man.
So when you say the 20%, the 80%, the 100%, the 5%, does that mean like chores in the house or communicating? Like, what does that mean?
Yeah, so that's what I want to know, because she has this beautiful sentiment of, sometimes we can pick up the slack. You've got 20, I've got 80, vice versa. But what happens if we both have 20? We have to sit and talk about it. Beautiful. But at the end of the day, what does that look like? Because somebody still has to cook dinner and clean and put the kids to bed and make the school lunches for tomorrow.
Feed the cats.
But if we both feed the cats, if we both have 20, I understand that you want to have this lovely, vulnerable conversation about that. But then what does that look like? How does that translate to couples in real life?
Yeah,
right.
Definitely.
And then who's the other person?
There's two
people.
Okay. Well, Esther Perel.
Yes.
I think
I love
that
her.
I hope one day she hears this.
I know.
So she hears that I think she's the greatest therapist of our generation.
Doesn't she have a game that you gave us for
Yes,
our wedding?
yes.
It's so cool. I love that. It's like Cards Against Humanity, but not really, and real life shit that you get to know your friends better with, or maybe your partner, or a couple of couples. I think that's really cool. What is the name of that? Do you remember?
It's called Where Should We Begin?
Yes.
Yes. It is probably the best gift that I've ever given anyone.
Yeah.
When I got that, I bring it everywhere with me now. And it just helps you have better conversations, like you said, with your spouse, or even people that you've known for years and years. And there are some sexually themed cards,
Right.
but they have little triangles on them. So if you're playing with your family, you want to take those out, you
Right.
can.
You're like,
She's
Mom,
she's thought of everything.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
but she is just absolutely brilliant.
And I love her accent.
Yeah.
I love a good accent.
Yeah.
And she has like this little asymmetrical haircut.
She's so
She's
awesome.
fun. She
Yeah.
reminds me of a client.
I love that.
Love it.
So I know that we posted on Instagram if anybody had any questions.
Yes.
Did we have any?
Yeah. We have a couple.
There are questions for you. Are you ready?
No pressure.
In the hot seat.
Right. So, first of all, one of my friends said, yeah, why you like that?
Yeah.
First of all, we're not getting into that. You know why I'm like that.
Did they really say that?
They really said that because they know
Literally.
you were her therapist.
Oh, gosh. And you know, you're a common household name. We talk about you often. I've referred you to quite a few people.
Pretty famous in our life.
I know, right? Like, you hold a lot of space in our life. Because I don't know, like, you've even said, I'm well therapized. But
I
sometimes
think that was Rachel's word. I think she.
You are well therapized, and sometimes you like, what's that meme with the kid is like
The
doing
hairbrush?
the hairbrush. Sometimes you're like that, but 90% of the time you are like, okay, let's talk about this, and here we are, and we're processing.
or two, like, I'm pissed. I know why I'm pissed. I know why I'm disappointed. And there are some things as we were talking about before about my job that I'm like, shit, I just got to talk about this. Or I don't know. I feel like I kind of understand why my feelings are the way that they are, but I love that I can come and talk to you, and maybe I'm not looking for an answer, but you will say to me, how can I help you? How can I help you with X, Y, and Z? Which is nice, because sometimes I'm not looking for an answer or a fixing, and you just have to say, like, I dumped. I'm good.
Yeah.
High five. See you next time.
Or sometimes
See you
I
next time.
ask, what do you need?
Yes,
And
that's it.
you-
That's it. You're right. You're right.
And
Yeah, you're
you
right.
and everybody else hates that question most of the time because they're like, I don't know.
I love that question because I'll be like, okay, what kind of? I'll say that to employees, or I'm like, do you just need to like vent? Or
Yes.
say to you, like, what kind of partner do you need right now? Do you need me to just listen, or are we figuring out a problem?
Yeah.
Okay, get to the questions
Okay.
because they're good.
So it's two questions, but I'll kind of just read them and then you kind of chime in. So, what are some ways to help calm anxiety, even though it can feel like there is none? There are like no ways to calm it. And then what does PT? I think this means to say why. Yeah. I'm sorry. Why does PTSD develop? And this person in particular had a really gnarly car accident, and she's pretty young. So I'm sure, like, she's like, maybe can you just give me a little pointer? Military and wars, and just more on that. So what I hear in that is the anxiety, and why does the PTSD develop?
Okay, yeah, not small questions.
Yeah, those are two big questions. Let's start with the anxiety one.
Correct.
So the question is, how do I handle anxiety when I feel like there are no coping skills? Because at this point, most people know what general coping mechanisms are. We know take deep breaths. We know I can scream into a pillow. We know
Yes.
I can go for a walk. I can listen to music. I can, you can just Google like the top 10 things to do for anxiety. But when we feel like none of those are working,
Right.
maybe I haven't even actually tried. Like, did you actually try taking deep breaths, or you just want like a better answer?
You're just like breathing heavy.
Right.
Right.
But for a lot of people, the worst thing that we do when we feel a negative emotion is to immediately judge it and want it to go away.
Yeah.
Right? I shouldn't be feeling this. I don't want to feel this.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I want this to go away.
Right.
Instead of, I'm feeling anxiety, and there's a huge difference between I am anxious and I notice that I'm feeling anxious.
Right.
That's huge in acceptance and commitment therapy, the separation between I am and I notice that I'm feeling that. And sometimes even that shift, because it takes away from this is all of me.
Right.
So the acknowledgement of I notice that I'm feeling, and also it's okay that I'm feeling anxiety,
Right.
because there's a hurricane on its way to Florida.
Oh.
So of course I'm feeling anxiety. And maybe my goal is not to make it go away, but to acknowledge I feel this.
Right.
And it's totally okay and normal and natural that I feel
Right.
this.
Right. And to the PTSD, you've we've touched on this like maybe once or twice in a therapy session. I don't know if you said there's like a period of time that PTSD kicks in, or is it like post-trauma that something happens, not like 32 days and it clicks on, but you had mentioned something and I can't really remember what that was.
So PTSD, and I don't have a DSM, so I can't fact check, but
Okay.
when right after a trauma happens, it's either 3 months or 6 months,
Okay.
I think, but I don't remember exactly.
Yeah, that's you.
I should know this, right? This is my job. But before, in that first 3 months or 6 months, the actual diagnosis that you would get is adjustment disorder. And then if the symptoms still persist, then I call it post-traumatic stress disorder.
Okay.
What are some symptoms of PTSD?
You guys tell me.
Yeah, I think that looks like super
Is that different for everyone?
It is, because it depends. Like, was it the car accident that she was in? Was it the death? Was it loss of limb? Was it cancer? So,
Right.
I mean, I think that
It's
kind of
just
looks different.
Yeah, it's different for everyone.
So-
Right.
But
like
this-
going to a doctor
Sure.
for your first checkup.
Yeah.
And like anytime you see a doctor after that, are you like,
yeah, that makes sense.
or you hear brakes or the metal crashing behind you or beside you, you're like, oh my God, it's me, it's me, it's me. Or like, oh, I'm living in it.
So I feel like this is one of those moments where I would want like Leah to do like a car crash across the screen with your commentary. It is so good.
So
Oh,
that
like,
would
what,
be
you want Leah to hit me? What the fuck
No.
are you talking about? That's not working.
Okay, can
so
I?
the
Yeah, go.
symptoms, right? That would be flashbacks.
Okay.
And sometimes it's flashbacks, sometimes it's anxiety, sometimes it's panic attacks, sometimes it's nightmares, right? There are a bunch of different symptoms of PTSD. And to actually have the diagnosis, you have to have so many of the criteria for a certain amount of time.
Okay.
That's something that a lot of people don't fully understand
So
about
that is
diagnosing.
like, that is a diagnosis. That is like,
Absolutely.
because it is post-traumatic stress disorder. And isn't there another one, PTSD, and maybe it's just the adjustment is like what you were saying. Yeah.
Now there is complex PTSD.
What is that?
So that is kind of a newer phrase that I'm hearing, but there's a book that came out, and I probably told both of you to read it. It's called What My Bones Know. And I can't think of the author's name off the top of my
that's
head,
cool.
which is
Her
terrible.
bones?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, perfect.
What does my
What are our
waist
bones
so
now?
know?
It is the best book about trauma that I've ever read.
Okay. All types of trauma.
Everything.
Is
I mean,
it about like your bones recognizing trauma? What-
Oh my
kind
gosh,
of.
there's an
Yeah.
element in my
like your
So-
genes don't forget it or something?
So the kind of, but
It resides.
the go-to book about trauma is The Body Keeps the Score, right? That's kind of the most famous
Yeah.
go-to. And it's a wonderful book, and the guy who wrote it is very well respected in the therapeutic community. It's a hard read, though. Like, it's long
And
and
what
it's
way?
dry.
Oh, okay.
But What My Bones Know is a memoir. So the author kind of talks about all of her own traumatic experiences, and then the book is about her journey to try and heal. But the point, bringing it back to the point, is that she finds out in the book, her therapist tells her that she has complex PTSD, which I had never really heard of as an official diagnosis, but that's one place that I've seen it come up.
Interesting. Okay, can I start asking some juicy questions about you being Stacy's therapist?
Sure.
Yeah.
What's juicy about it?
What have you not
Fucked
listened
up
to?
things.
Have you
Why
not
is she
listened to
like
episode
this?
1
Fucked up
and
things,
2?
fucked up responses, and she gets through it. No, I'm kidding. Just go
Okay,
ahead.
so how did you? Well, first I'm going to ask you, like, how did you find Marissa, and how long ago was that?
A very long time ago. When I once had a husband, long time ago.
Ooh.
Yeah, once had a husband. I actually think I might have found you through Becky. Why does that make me want to cry?
Because it's a loss of a really intense friendship that you had for a really long time.
Yeah, that's weird.
It's not weird.
It's weird because I don't really like.
You think about her more than you probably admit, and you talk about her
Why?
because you miss her.
I know, but why? I mean, I know why I miss her, but sorry, I know why I miss you. But maybe that's like one of those childhood things, right?
Well, I think you have lost so many important people in your life, and while Becky isn't dead,
Thank God.
Not around. She won't talk to you. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but she has reached out and like, because she lost her dad too, you know, and that her dad was a huge. Why am I telling her story? It's not for me to tell, but yeah, and I think I might have. I don't know if I talked about that in one of the podcasts, but the loss of a friendship, like you don't wish each other ill will, but you've
like an important friendship.
Yeah, and you haven't necessarily outgrown each other. You do different things, and maybe you have different expectations of friendships, and sometimes you break up.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I found Marissa through Becky, and like I said, I mean, you've been through.
You've seen it all. I mean, so you've seen like Stacy's whole trauma life.
What did you call it last at DCD?
Oh yeah, death, cancer, and divorce.
Yeah. So at what point in knowing Stacy were you just like, holy shit.
Bless her
like,
heart.
What do
Bless
I do?
her heart.
Yeah, like not again. Like
it's always again, but that's okay.
So definitely a story that I want to share that I think you guys will be okay with. It was after your dad had passed away, which was of course like the hardest thing. And you came after that. I'm like, I don't even know what to say.
What do you even say? Yeah.
Nothing. Like, I support anything you want to do. You want to carry around a bloody keychain, you do whatever you want.
Which it's in my bra.
Yeah.
So it's okay.
Do whatever you want. And then I think then maybe when your bio mom died, there was a day that I reached out and we got on the phone together and you two were in the car.
We were driving back from actually cleaning out her apartment.
Oh,
okay. So, and I think the timeline is correct because the way I remember it is, I was like, oh, I'm so sorry about your mom. And then you guys were like, guess what else happened? So we got in this car accident and it was really bad. And Stacy has cancer. And these two are on the phone laughing like hyenas. And I'm sitting there going,
cackling.
because it was just like, it was comical at that point. It was just like, of course she has fucking cancer because we got in a car accident. Why not?
So to answer your question, that was the moment where I was like, I no longer know how to support them other than to laugh with them and say I'm here for whatever you need.
Right.
Yeah.
But not a kidney because I only have one. Fun fact.
Why do you only have one?
I was born with only one.
Like Jim Jams. And did you know that from the beginning?
No,
or
I did not. Yeah.
Do I only have one kidney?
How did you find that out?
Well, I had to have my appendix taken out, which was kind of a mini trauma.
Yeah.
And the next day, I remember they were like taking my blood, and I was like you said, I was like drugged up and not in my right mind. And
how old were you?
25.
So you've lived your whole life. Your whole life.
That
whole
is insane.
And the nurse, I remember her being like, so honey, did you know you only had one kidney? And I was like, I thought you took out my appendix. And she's like, we did. But we
JK. Oh my God.
So like I called my mom and my mom was great. It was a whole thing. But so that was anything you need, Stacy, but not a kidney.
What are some of those other questions, just real quick, what you had for?
Okay, well, I think the other one was just, you're famous for really good one-liners in our household.
Oh, yeah.
And so and I'll kind of let you tell, you gave one to Stacy about one of her marriages. So why don't you tell that story?
So out of the 100 red flags, which one finally hit you?
Yeah, that's
my answer was 99. But like, is that, I mean, I think I've asked you this in sessions. When you are counseling someone and you just see the road ahead and the full on head into the brick wall thing, that's got to be hard. Like, fucking do something different.
Yeah.
Do something different.
Yeah.
I mean,
but if I were to say that to you, if I said that to you a month into that process, like, hey, you need to leave. Right. You would have been like, I don't trust this therapist. I'm not going back.
No,
She's
but I
telling me
might
what
have
to
turned
do.
around and asked you why. Because, I mean, whatever. You're probably fucking right.
Yeah. But you had said something earlier before the show, and we were talking about, do people just come to you and they automatically assume you have the answer for whatever's wrong with them? And then there's some typical responses you have?
Sometimes, right? And that's a really hard thing about being a therapist is you, assuming you get into it for the right reasons, you want to help.
Right.
And you want to help people feel better and live better lives. And then you learn that you're not supposed to fix. That's not really your ultimate. You have to kind of help guide people to their own conclusions and on their own path. And there's all different modalities of therapy, obviously, but to be able to sit with someone for as long as they need you to sit with them before they make the decision, make the hard decision.
Yeah. How do you deal with someone like, because your sessions are only an hour, and I always think about this. It's such a weird thing.
Sometimes you can go longer though if you told her I need an hour and a half. She could budget out that time for you.
Right, but what if you don't? Right, you go in, you're like, it's an hour, I got it, but the person is like so deep in their trauma hole, and it's like 58 minutes. You're like, sorry, time's up.
After you answer this, I'm going to talk about that as a hairdresser too. So,
I bet. Yeah.
So
yeah,
answer that for us.
I think it's something that comes with time. You have to obviously be fully engaged with your client and be present with their story, but also you have a clock somewhere in your office where you're kind of keeping an eye on how much time you have left and where the client is in their processing. So it has happened before, but it's the longer that you practice, the easier it is to navigate.
Like guide them towards the end.
Or at the end, if someone is like fine the whole session and the last 5 minutes, this probably happens to you too. The last 5 minutes, they're like, I forgot to tell you about my dead dad.
Oh, man.
And you just say, okay, I'm going to make a note and we're going to talk about that next time.
Yeah,
Right.
totally.
So for me, right, if I'm double booked, you have 30, 45 minutes to an hour to apply. So you're already talking to these people, right? And now I have this process time. I need you to go sit in the reading room because I have somebody else. Meanwhile, they are like deep into telling you something tragic. And what am I going to say to them? Okay, let's reconvene in 30 minutes and I have to wash your hair and be quiet about it. So then I can get 45 minutes on the tail end. Like that's hard. And again, like, I think my owner and my manager really have tried to be understanding of that. But it's hard.
Timing is not your strong suit, or is your strong suit?
It is, because I'm on my time. It works out perfectly. It's great. But it's hard. It's hard to cut somebody off. Like, I hear you're struggling. I hear this. So you're going to go ahead and go sit and process. Or like, oh, so ding, ding, ding. I got somebody else that has their own trauma. So can you? Yeah, that's not fun.
Totally. So, as we kind of wrap this up, and you've been an amazing guest, we're so happy that you were here. What kind of advice can you give people that are maybe thinking about going to therapy or think it is for them or not for them, from a therapist's mouth, not just from TikTok or what they see or whatever?
Thank you for that. There's a lot of TikTok advice. I would say, obviously, I think it's beneficial for everyone, even if you don't feel like you have something that's a diagnosis, even if you don't feel like you have anxiety, depression, whatever. It's so beneficial just to have a space to process stuff, and even have someone say, like, have you thought about it this way? Or once someone learns more about you, then they can say, do you think maybe you do this because your mom or dad did this? And people are like, oh, I never thought about it that way. But the recommendation that I give people if they're thinking about it is always make multiple appointments with different therapists.
Right. Yeah.
Because I can tell you, the research says to this day, the biggest predictor of therapy being effective is not the therapist's credentials or how long they've been practicing or where they went to school or the letters after their name. It's the relationship that you have.
Yeah, totally.
So if you're thinking about it, make as many appointments as you can, obviously based on insurance and finances, and sit down with each of those people and see how you feel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, what's your gut tell
I always
you?
compare it to, like, can we change our own oil? Absolutely we can. But sometimes we need help because there might be like a little something different, or sometimes I just don't want to do it. So you invest in somebody else that's really good at it. Yep.
So where are you accepting new clients? If someone listens to this and they're like, that one, I need to be seeing her. Where can people find you? Or
I am accepting new clients.
And do you take insurance?
I do.
Okay.
I take, what do I take? Aetna, Cigna, and United.
Okay.
nice.
And my office is in South Tampa, and they could just go to my website, which is empoweringtampa.com.
And you do a lot of virtual therapy too. Is that something like you can do that from the jump, or does somebody need to come see you in person the first time?
So it used to be that it was kind of required to see somebody in person one time, and then they could go virtual. But I think since COVID, that rule is a little more of a gray area. So I am set up to do virtual even from session 1 if somebody preferred that.
Okay, so if somebody wants to contact you, they can drop us a line in the comments.
Yeah, or you guys too. They can just reach out to either of you. And
okay,
awesome.
cool.
Well, Marissa, thank you so much. This has
Thank
been
you
amazing.
so much.
Amazing. We're super pumped, and we will talk to you soon.
Thank you guys so much.